I'm Ted Elvhage from Rymdkapital, which is the first Nordic pure space tech investors ever been made in the Nordics. We invest in space for the benefit of Earth, and today we will be talking about the big data coming from Earth and why this matters to all of us. So the thing is that already today we have a massive impact from space data, and it's becoming even more as we move forward. You might ask yourself, how is space data affecting my everyday life today? Well, if you're a farmer, fisher, or if you do anything in forestry, space is the better way, cheaper way, and the most different way to do it. You can actually predict how much produce you will have for a year. You will be much easier to find, what your forest is instead of sending out people doing it. And in terms of farming, I heard just the number just recently when I was in the US, where they said that only in the US alone, if we turn off all the satellite data out there, we will lose 30 to 40% of the productivity from farming in the US alone. And this will only increase the dependency on space and satellite data that we're using today. It reminds me a little bit of what the IT used to be in the past, where people said, we don't need IT, we don't need real-time data, we don't need anything of that. And today, if your IT goes down, you can't do any grocery shopping, you can't go by bus, you can't do anything without IT. In the future, without space data from satellites, you won't be able to do anything. All right, so what else do we have? So we also have weather prognosis. We knew this because we're used to see the satellites pictures. It's becoming more and more accurate thanks to better and better data. And actually, the ozone layer, which has nothing to do with the weather, but massive to do with the sustainability and weather conditions on Earth, could not be solved unless we had space data to look at it. And how many of you guys listening to this right now look at your app every day to see, is it going to be rain, sunshine, or something else? Actually, this surprises me a lot. I remember when this first started becoming a thing, you look at your app and it said, today it's going to be 10 degrees. And you went to the window where you had your little thermometer and you said, yes, it's 10 degrees. And I thought I would never get rid of that, because how would the satellite data know better than my window thermometer what the temperature would be? Well, actually today, I only look at my phone, and maybe you do as well. So this is becoming more and more dependency on space data, which actually is more accurate most of the time. All right, the climate tracking, we talked about the ozone levels, of course, but even catastrophes, environmental things. Actually, 60% of the space of the environmental data comes from satellites today, which really means that you can't do sustainability without space data. That's how important this is. So without the vantage point, the vantage view of looking down on Earth, we will not solve the 1.5 degrees heating of the globe or anything else, because that's actually going to be crucial, not only for what we can see right now, but also for the future with the seas and the temperatures, depending on the effects, what's going on. Now, positioning, this is kind of funny. People ask me, why do you need data and satellites? We have Google Maps. Well, guess what? Guess where they get their positioning data from? And actually, not only is this good, the first one to do this was actually the US, but the one that has the most accurate position data today is the European with the satellites that we put up. So sometimes Europe is a little bit behind, but when we do it, we get it right. All right, timing for bank transactions. So actually, if you ever done the bank transactions on your own or via the bank, you need a timestamp when that happened, and banks need to speak to each other. So the question is, which time will you use? Well, we use satellite time, and that's how we get it right. And it makes me think also now when we actually go to the moon with the new Artemis projects and things like that, what is the time zone on the moon? Well, you can ask yourself that, because it's not the same time zone as in Stockholm or in Copenhagen or in Oslo or Helsinki. It's going to be something else. And we don't know what that's going to be yet, but, it's going to be nice to figure out. Communication, we know this because we do, satellite TV, blah, 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 went through the satellite. Well, the real revolution was really that we could make TV for everyone, which was not possible before because they didn't have receivers. With a satellite terminal, you can now get TV almost whoever you are, wherever you are. And the connectivity for data and communication, this is really, really important. And also other opportunities for you guys out there being entrepreneurs, like cybersecurity, what's going to happen with laser optical communication. And actually, you know, also if you look at all the broadband that we have out there, all the old copper nets and whatever that is, that's going to have to be replaced at some point. Will it be satellite data? Well, you know, Elon Musk bets it is. And I think he's right. He's right on to something. There's actually today about 3 to 4 billion people who do not have access to internet. What if they could have access to internet? And if they did, you know, with all the things we have on the internet, they could get, you know, the same data as you could have, you know, in Africa, anywhere in Africa or anywhere in Sweden for that matter, the same data and the same schools, the same schooling that they have at Harvard or MIT or Stanford or Chalmers for that instance, or KTH. So this is going to be massive for the mass education of people on the planet. And of course, lately we've seen, unfortunately, events in our neighbor countries going on, and national security is becoming a real important way to defend our countries. And I'm not meaning weapons now, but just the information to know what's propaganda, what's real, and making sure that we actually have surveillance on, you know, our national security. But it's not just the national security of the country, it's also, you know, national food security, and it's a catastrophe security, things like that. If there's a flood somewhere, how do we know and how do we get help to the right places? Or if there's a forest fire somewhere, how do we go there and where to start? So today, it's almost impossible to imagine a day without the satellites, but we don't call it satellites. We just call it data, and you all get it on your little phone. And this is, you know, what you need to access the data. And even in the future, a very near future, your phone is going to be connected to the satellites directly. Really interesting. So the data is coming up and it's big. All right, so what's leading this whole thing with satellite data? Well, one thing is actually the cost of sending up new satellites is going down. The one thing is the satellites themselves, which is really, they used to be large like buses, and now today they're like small like washer machines or like dishwasher or refrigerator. And we call those CubeSats, and they weigh like 60 to 150 kilos. And those are the ones that makes it much easier to deploy new technology with new sensors to do new things from space. And we sort of rediscovered the low Earth orbit doing this. Now, in order to get a refrigerator or, you know, even a Tesla or anything else up to space, you need rockets. And this picture you're looking at right now is showing you how the cost of launching something has gone down. And, you know, we're talking about the launch cost of a forecast dollars per kilos today 1,500, but you know it used to be 10,000 and now it's 1,500 per kilo. That's almost like a 90 or 85% reduction. But we're looking at the forecast here by reusing some of these things, doing it a little bit smarter, doing it software first, 3D printing, things like that will actually take it down in the, you know, optimistic case to $100 per kilo you send up to space. Now you can imagine when the market and the costs, the barriers to get to that market comes down from 10,000 to 1,500 and maybe down to 100, 300 US dollars per kilo. Now that's going to, you know, open up a new mass market. And whoever has that access, the elevator up, you know, that's going to be a huge difference. And so talking about elevators, you know, one of the big revolutions in doing skyscrapers in the past was really the elevator to get all the way up to the top. The new micro launchers coming in right now and the large ones like Starship and other things, you know, those are the future elevators. So we are building now an economy, an orbit economy, and basically a space economy that is sort of fueling stuff that we need on Earth. And the next step will actually be doing the same thing for the moon and then later on for Mars as well. These are just some boring pictures around or some figures that it's going to, you know, be more than 3.1x in the next 17 years. There are several different sort of projections on this, but we all know that this is going to be probably much bigger than internet. I did the reference just recently on my other slide that, you know, whatever the internet did, people said we don't need it. Today, if you're sitting here listening to me, you say satellites, we don't need it. You're going to be in the same position as people in the 1999-2000 said, we don't need internet. You know, everything's going to be space. There's going to be space for forestry, space for mining, space for industry, space for sustainability, space for peace, space for the humanity, you know, all those kind of things. It's going to be just a regular day in our daily life. All right, so where are we going to see these markets except for the big data? Of course, we're going to see the space-based solar power, 23 billion, quite a big market. They already sent out just recently from Stanford, and I think also from China, some experiments to do solar power and transfer that power to the Earth. How do you do that? Microwaves. We already have the technology. The thing is, can we do it with, a business model that's profitable? Space logistics, we just spoke about that. It's going to be a lot of rockets and also space ships around the Earth. That's 21 billion. Microgravity, there's so many pharma experiments waiting to get to microgravity, do their experiments. And things grow differently in microgravity than do on Earth. Because something grows on Earth, you have the gravitation pulling it down. When you don't have that, you get perfect symmetries, perfect crystals and stuff. You will get new materials, will be interesting to explore. All right, so we have moon and asteroid mining. I'm hoping LKAB is listening to this and everyone else. 12 billion is going to be huge. Space exploration, maybe that's still for most of the people, large corporations, large countries, but there will be some of us will have our own spaceship in the garage that will go out and explore something. And that will be awesome when that happens. Space tourism already started. Of course, you have the balloons as well, but you have the Jeff Bezos, the Richard Bransons, all of these guys, this is going to be a huge industry. And of course, we're going to have commercial space stations, and they're coming up very soon and in the making right now when ISS is coming down. So the global market is quite big. In 2021, it actually grew by almost 100%, and 50.4 billion invested in new space tech. And new space tech is software first, 3D printing, stuff that's not that capital intensive, things that you and I can actually invest in. That's interesting. So that's actually most of this market is the US market. Now, the European market, you can see the same sort of up to the right trends. And Europe is right now betting a lot on space, and there's a lot of money and capital coming in, which for you and me as an angel investor or early stage investor means that there will be an exit market when we invest there already. So this is really good news, and why we all should get into investing in new space. If you want to know more about data and some Earth observation, I'm going to show you some of this, but there's a new agency in Europe called USPA, and it's in Prague. And you can download this report that will give you the different segments for Earth observation and GNSS positioning data that we are very good at in Europe, and ways to explore it. Because, the problem is that we have so much data, but we don't use all that data. And some of that data, actually almost 80% of that data is free to use. So if you're a corporation today and you're wondering, I'm a construction company, does this affect me? Yes, it will. Check the report. I'm going to show you some data from the report. All right. So here are actually the different sectors that are affected. If you work in any one of these sectors I'm going to show you right now, you should get the report to figure out what you can do. All right, so agriculture, we already said that, very important for agriculture, much cheaper, much better. I know a lot of big scale agriculture doing IoT on the fields. You know what? It doesn't work that well. You want satellite data, and you want AI, you want ML, you want, picture treatment, all the stuff that you've done before, but from space. All right, aviation and drones, huge thing. These are going to be self-driving, just like cars have been and trucks are being. And Sweden are quite good at this. So, listen up, we can do this. Biodiversity, ecosystem, checking out what's going on. Is someone polluting our industry, the supply chain checking? Instead of sending someone out every month or so, or every 2 months, when they clean everything up because you have a visitor, what if you have a satellite passing every 90 minutes, checking that you're not polluting the river? Now that will make a difference from supply chain and sustainability. Climate service, absolutely. Consumer solution, tourism and health, absolutely. If you want to be eco-tourist, you want to know where to go, and you don't want to pollute more. If someone polluted that stuff very much and they can't take care of it, go somewhere else or stay at home. I don't know. Energy and raw materials, absolutely. New 3D printing materials, new materials from, being in orbit. All these things are coming down. Environmental monitoring, fisheries and aquaculture, of course. Forestry, we spoke about that, and also forest fires. Infrastructure, absolutely essential. Marine time and, knowing where the boats are, because, the AIS they have today, they can turn them off, go away and do shit and come back, and we wouldn't know. But now we can track them with a Norwegian company called Elvhage, and they will know, because they match the fingerprints of that boat, they'll know exactly where they went and identified it, whether or not they wanted to or not. Rail and infrastructure, absolutely. Road, automotive, yes. Communication, absolutely essential. Cybersecurity, part of that, absolutely. And urban development and cultural heritage. All of this will be a part of it. All right, so here's actually today, 2.8 billion euro in total revenue. You can see agriculture, climate services, all the ones I said, the large ones and a lot of the small ones. If you're into any one of these, check out the report, contact me or contact things, and we'll help you to get in contact with the right data. This slide is really interesting. This slide says on the x-axis is like how much market share do you have in 2021. On the y-axis, it will tell you how much market share will you have in, later on in 2031, in 10 years. The interesting thing is that if you're still on that same spot, you can see if you grew and if you have a higher market share or not. What we're looking at is the one that became bigger and the ones who are actually on the top side. And one that really turns out to be big is insurance and finance, because that's going to have a much larger impact. So I'll give you an example. In Finland, there's a really cool company called ISI. And one of the things they do, one of their applications is to have a radar so they can see the level of the sea through the clouds. If you have a car parked somewhere and the level of the sea came up by X centimeters, they know that your car is damaged. So they can send a note directly to the insurance company, which is insurance and finance, the big bubble up here, and they can give you the money immediately. No handling, fact-based, you're happy, they're happy, everyone's saving money. And that's the future. It's going to be fact-based from satellites. So this is just a small thing going on. So if you believe that satellites are important, welcome to my world. Welcome to reach out to me. If you don't believe it, your world will be black. Because if we turn those satellites off, there will be nothing in your life the same anymore. Things will be totally different. You will not be as productive. You will not be as communicative. You will not be connected. There's so many things that satellites can do for humanity and Earth that you probably didn't know about. And if you don't believe in it, shout out hello and see if your internet works. And, if you don't have satellite service, it probably doesn't going to work depending on where you're at. In Sweden, if you take the train from Stockholm to Åre, there will be several places where you go, hello, anyone out there? Can I have some communication, please? So, welcome to the bright world of satellite data. Rymdkapital is absolutely an actor in this. If you want to know more, if you are a venture doing something in this space, if you're an investor, want to know more about what we do and co-invest with us, let us know. Here are our contact details. And thank you very much. Thanks for having us. And also, big congratulations on your 8th year anniversary. Thank you.
We actually have time for a question.
Oh, we do? Yeah, okay.
So do we have a space for a time question? So please, this is the moment. Any questions? Or maybe something here? Something? Oh, yeah.
Ask about, so it's a lot in the mainstream media nowadays with observatories, astronomers, and Starlink, and many others coming. So there's 50,000, 100,000 satellites soon in orbit. How do you see that evolving, that flash of interest?
Oh,
Repeat the question.
yeah. So the question is, we have a lot of satellites coming up with Starlink and Elon Musk and others. And how do we see that evolving with astronomers asking them about clear skies and things like that? So a couple of trends going on there is, first of all, it's going to be a mess. The way we actually messed up the oceans, we could mess up the low Earth orbit as well. They're sending out stuff, and actually China and Russia, they, just for demonstration purpose, they blew up one of the satellites. And then suddenly, instead of having like thousands of things going around there, suddenly I have 30 million things going around, very small pieces. And if you're on the space station today and you sit there, you can hear pling, 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 and those are a part of that thing. So a big initiative going on in Europe and even in the US, of course, is clean up space. And we talk about green space, cleaning up space, but also new space law. So Sweden is coming in with a new space law. Spain actually got their space agency quite recently. We're going to be space laws everywhere. And that was not the case in the past. So we are all recognizing that's a thing. And people like myself, we see it's a huge opportunity to invest in because it will be mandatory. So one thing, for instance, in the US, they already now talking about if you have a satellite up, you are responsible for bringing that down within 5 years, decommission it. So now with the reusability, it's not about getting stuff up to space. It's also getting the data, getting it down safely without leaving anything behind. So thank you very much for acknowledging that trend. The other trend that people talked about is that, we talk about satellites. We're talking about, let's see different numbers, 140,000 satellites by 2030. And today we only have like 10,000. And actually then Rwanda came in with the guy who founded OneWeb, a great guy, and they applied to get up 327,000 satellites. I don't know why, but I think they're going to take over internet in Africa or the rest of the world. So there's going to be a lot of stuff coming up in this area in the future, which means that if you go up in space, you have all this stuff coming in. If you don't time it right, you're going to die. Yes. Oh, sir.
Thanks again for a great presentation. I mean, I've seen you many times. I was wondering, you were recently in Silicon Valley, so would you have some insights from the American perspective? And just quick word to the audience, I'm also Rwandan, so if you want to know why Rwanda and some other countries are launching satellites, then I would definitely try to give you some insights.
Yeah, so the question is, was I in Silicon Valley or not? No, I was in Silicon Valley. Are there any new things to bring back to Europe from that conference? And also, Desiree was actually asking the question is from Rwanda, coming back to my former comment. He's also representative of USPA, European Space Project Agency. So if you want to know more about space data, that's the guy to contact. So yes, so a couple of things that's happening in the US is quite interesting. One thing is that they still haven't had successes on the micro launchers. I know if you follow Relativity, we met them. They were like bullish on that we're going to send up the micro launcher. It hasn't been sent up yet, so there's some issues there. We talked to Viasat, which is a large, of course, satellite company, and they're saying the trend is coming to larger satellites. So it's been going down to smaller and smaller satellites, where the satellite could be as small as your phone, your mobile phone. And now they're going up to be bigger again, but going up to 2 tons of satellites, coming back to like car size, where we talk in Sweden about CubeSats, which are like the size of a dishwasher and much easier to handle. So the trend is actually making these bigger and bigger for different reasons and more surveillance. And there's like a mixture of military and civil use in the US that we have here in the Europe yet. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so going back to your green and clean up the sky, would you say that there are some initiatives of synchronizing that between countries, like covered by UN? So will every country do their own ideas?
No, there's a collaboration, of course. So in Europe, you have European Space Agency, which most of the countries are a part of. And actually including Canada, actually in this case. Then in the US, of course, you have NASA. So we collaborate, and also with India and Japan is very close to this. And of course, there's some companies or some countries right now maybe have a different philosophy, but the majority of the Western world has the same philosophy on this. So yes, there's hope for space laws. I mean, I'll give you an example. So for instance, there's like Lagrange areas between the sun and Earth, where you could basically, if you wanted to, if it gets too hot, we could put in some moon sand and shield it off a little bit. There's no law telling us how much moon sand you can pour in. So if someone just pours in a lot of sand, it's going to be really cold in Sweden again. So maybe we should have some laws to stop that. Where are I now?
What do you think about now the China competition now, because it's getting, and even India now is getting in the States?
Yeah, so the question was, what do I think about the China competition in this regards? And China has been fantastic from a sort of evolutionary perspective. 15 years ago, they didn't have a space strategy. Now they're sending things up to the backside of the moon, things that we don't even do. I mean, they're way ahead of Europe. Europe is lacking behind on every account. US is far ahead of everyone. China is catching up really well. They have great scientists. They're doing a great job. And the problem we have is the geopolitical collaboration climate right now. But China is doing a lot of things in space that we don't even know about. And they're really, really good. And that's why a lot of space companies don't patent their things, because they don't want it to be a blueprint for someone to copy somewhere else. Not saying that China would do that, but maybe someone else. I don't know.
I think we have to stop that.
Yeah, sorry.
We could actually devote the whole event to space, because it's so incredibly interesting. So thank you.
It is. Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. Yeah.
Thank you.